Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to Conestoga Rec Center and to Senator Wyden's 2023 Washington County Town Hall. My name is Nafisa Fai. I'm a Washington County Commissioner. I represent District 1, which includes Aloha, Beaverton, Cooper Mountain, Reedville, and we now redistricted because reapportionment in the census happened. So I have a new neighborhood, Raleigh Hills, Whitford, and Garden Homes. So welcome to District 1 if you are from those areas. I look forward to getting to know those neighborhoods, and I look forward to reaching out and connecting. Before we start the town hall, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before I introduce Senator Wyden, I would like to go over the format for asking questions. Each person who wants to ask a question to the senator should have gotten a ticket as they were coming in. If you still want a ticket, please raise your hand and staff are paying attention and we'll come to you and give you a ticket. I will call out two numbers by the last three digits of the ticket. The first person to ask question and the second person to ask question. So two numbers, first person and second person. We'll do two numbers at a time. When your number is called, please raise your hand or stand up so a staff person with a microphone can find you. If necessary, please come to the end of the seating rows. Staff will then check your number and then you can ask your question. When the senator is finished answering, I will call out the next two numbers. In the interest of time, please keep your questions concise so the senator has the opportunity to engage with everyone, as many people as possible. I'm looking to read high school. Okay, we're waiting. Okay, we'll wait. I would like to now introduce the senator. I want to thank you.
Just don't go into my shady past.
No.
Thank you.
Senator, in Washington County, we're very generous and we're very inspired and impressed with the work you do. So we're a very fan of Senator Wyden. I would like to thank Senator Wyden for his leadership on the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. For fighting for humane immigration policy, the clean energy provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act, and finally, drum roll, no, not that we're picking, for your role in the CHIPS Act and getting it passed. If I may say a few things about the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act encourages more domestic chip manufacturing and to spur innovations within the industry. Over a 5-year period of time, the CHIPS Act will provide $40 billion in grants for manufacturing companies and $10 billion for research. The Act also creates a 25% investment tax credit for equipment and facilities used to produce semiconductor or semiconductor manufacturing tools. Semiconductor companies nationwide, including those that have a presence in Washington County, are poised or preparing to leverage these funds for near-term investments. In addition, the bill set aside $10 billion for regional innovation and technology hubs across the country, bringing together state and local governments, institutes for higher education, labor unions, businesses, and community-based organizations to create regional partnerships to develop technology, innovation, and the manufacturing sector. This is really a big opportunity for Oregon. Washington County is having conversations to learn more about balanced approach forward while also maximizing investment for Washington County. Now, the much anticipated introduction without going into the background. Senator Ron Wyden was first elected to Congress in 1980 to represent Oregon's 3rd district. In 1996, he was elected to U.S. Senate in a special election, becoming the first U.S. Senator to be elected in a vote-by-mail election. He was sworn in to the seat once held by his mentor, U.S. Senator Wayne Morse. When Senator Wyden was elected as U.S. Senator in 1996, he promised to do a town hall in every county, every year. After more than 1,000 town halls, please, let's welcome Senator Ron Wyden to Beaverton and to Washington County Town Hall number 1032. Welcome. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. Commissioner, what an inflationary introduction. So kind. Let's give the commissioner a big round of applause. And, you know, this is the beginning of the year, and people are asking about the Congress opening and the legislature opening. And I was concerned that the commissioner might have commission duties today. So we are very lucky to have her, and thank you so much for doing this. How many of you have never been to one of our town meetings before? Lots of new people. Well, what happens at one of our town meetings is I usually start with a few comments, like about 40 minutes or so, and people just really enjoy it. And a couple of those folks over there think I'm serious. No. This is not what we're going to do. For the next 90 minutes or so, this is time for you to educate me. Washington County is a long way from Washington, D.C. And my guess is, and we were just over at Fred Meyer and going around doing some errands and stuff, for a lot of folks in Washington County, D.C. might as well be Mars for all it has to do with people's life here. And the commissioner talked about chips, and we're going to talk, I'm sure, about homeless, and we're going to talk about broadband, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about health care. Really big deal that Oregon voted basically to make health care a human right. Really big, big deal. The country is going to spend $3.5 trillion this year on health care, about 330 million of us. So we could basically, for the amount of money we're spending, we can send every family of 4 a check for something like $40,000. Say, here, go buy your health care. So we're spending enough. We're going to talk about those kinds of issues. No subjects are off limits. That is going to be the end of my speechifying for the afternoon. And thank you, thank you, thank you, Washington County. This is a great crowd on a winter afternoon. And Commissioner, I think you're going to draw some tickets, or how are we going to do this?
We'll draw some tickets.
Wonderful.
You ready?
Yeah, all set.
I pull 2. First number, last 3 numbers are 126. 126, raise your hand. Good, thank you. The second number is 106. 106.
Please.
Got it, thank you.
Senator Wyden, thank you so much for holding this town meeting and for making yourself available to your constituents. I come to you, I am the founder of Oregon Aviation Watch. I've worked on
Oregon
Aviation Watch.
Aviation.
And I've worked on aviation issues for years. We are currently working with Earth Justice and petitioning for an endangerment finding for leaded aviation fuel. Washington County is the most lead polluted county in the entire state. Hillsborough Airport ranks 8th among 20,000 airports in lead emissions. It's also a major cause of noise in this community, and many people are subjected to student pilots coming out and circling our homes for hours on end. I'm aware that the FAA Reauthorization Act is coming up, and I'm wondering if you would be willing to work with me on legislation, and I'm working with people across the country, on legislation to protect local communities from the toxins and the noise generated by general aviation airports.
I would be glad to work with you. Our experience with aviation, to a great extent, has in Oregon been especially on the defense side, because in rural Oregon and the like, they're interested in projects, and the Pentagon says you can't have this airspace and the like. So the fact that the FAA bill is coming up is a perfect opportunity to work on the civilian side. I gather that this is mostly commercial aircraft you're talking about?
In this country, about 45% are private pilots, and another 40 to 45% are student pilots recruited from all over the world. I mean, we're training the Chinese.
I'd be glad to work with you. And my sense is that at least on the training side, it's not a Department of Defense issue. Am I right about that?
No, it is not.
Great. We'll go to work with you. And let's, Rhea, if you'll wander over and touch base with folks that are concerned about this issue with respect to the neighborhoods and their safety and the like. This is an important question. And as I say, we've had most of our experience with DOD projects in rural Oregon, where people want to do some kind of economic program or some neighborhood program. The Pentagon says, nope, we can't do it because of airspace. And the rules were written from yesteryear. They didn't keep up with the times. That may be the case here. Good.
Thank you
We'll get
so
to work
much.
with you. Thank you.
Go ahead, next number. You.
Oh, wait till he's done. Hi, Senator Wyden, big fan over here. Actually, I have a more global question, I suppose. I was curious to know if there's a particular area you plan on focusing your energies in this latest legislative session in Washington. If you had a particular area that you plan to focus on.
There are going to be a host of major issues. Let me tick off a few of them, if I might. I'm chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and that is the tax committee, and we have jurisdiction over Medicare and Social Security. There are Republicans who are saying that as part of the effort to deal with what's called the debt ceiling, that they're going to come back and call for cutting Social Security and Medicare. That's not going to happen on my watch. That would be a very good example. Second, you may have seen that they recently passed a bill to take away the additional resources for the Internal Revenue Service to deal with wealthy tax cheats. Your question I could go on for quite a while on, but let me just take a minute and talk about why this is so extraordinarily important. First of all, we have two tax systems in America. We have one tax system for nurses and firefighters and teachers. They pay taxes with every single paycheck. You can see it right there. So the government has their information already. What we need is the additional help with the IRS because, as you know, they've been slow in answering the phone. There have been problems with refunds, but there's especially serious problems with making sure that wealthy tax chiefs have to open up. See, their tax returns aren't like the firefighter and the nurse and the teacher. To a great extent, they can pay what they want when they want to. And if you really don't want to pay any taxes and you're wealthy, they kind of write articles called Buy, Borrow, and Die. And you can kind of just go indefinitely. So I'm going to be very busy at the Finance Committee. We have other issues with respect to trade and competitiveness, which the Commissioner... Could I just, ma'am, respectfully, ma'am, respectfully, ma'am, there is, ma'am, there is, folks, ma'am, I'm not going to interrupt.
Hunter's laptop? What about all the files?
We have a lot of...
Joe Biden.
Please.
You don't think this has to do with treason?
Could I interrupt you for a second? We have a lot of numbers.
Get your hands off me.
We have a lot of numbers and a lot of questions.
Folks, we're going to... We'll just
Please,
take a
we'll,
break.
We'll
Money is going to the Chinese government to get the cash.
We're going to take a break
Yeah.
until this person has had... Ma'am,
wait.
ma'am, I'm
If you get
answering...
in line, we'll answer your question. Can you take a number, please? And then we'll come. Okay, give me your number. We'll add on to the list. No, not yet. There's a lot of people ahead of you. I'm drawing the numbers. I promise. I promise.
About treason. And how he
I'll sit aside. I haven't called the next number. I haven't called the next number.
No, we're not going to call the next number because we're going to let the person...
about the water for your renewable agenda. Why don't you ask us?
Open public town meetings. Thank you all for your patience.
Thank you
and
all.
welcome. All right, we will get back to calling numbers. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you all for being so calm. Really appreciate it.
And
Ask everybody to just simply exhale and take a big breath. Blow it out. So exhale, inhale.
Sorry for the momentary disruptions. We will resume, and
Let me just finish the very good question that was asked some time ago.
Yeah, paper towels, thank you.
And thank you all for your patience. This goes with the turf, and I'm sorry that when we lay out a set of rules, which is everybody gets a chance to speak, you just call your number, that wasn't respected. And am I losing the person who asked the question?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to
So,
the person who did such a terrific job in trying to keep her calm. Yes. I wanted to give you
well, the patience of Washington County is much appreciated. Debt ceiling, priority business, because that is the full faith and credit of the United States. Hugely important. That'll be a major issue. The question of tax fairness will be a major issue. The question of prescription drugs, and let me mention why this is so important, folks. Big Pharma, for the first time in American history, got beat on the floor of the United States Senate last year. First time in American history. And right now, we're implementing the bill, and I'm largely the author of it as chairman of the Finance Committee. For the first time, there'll be penalties against price gouging. So if Big Pharma raises their prices over inflation, they'll have to pay a penalty. So these are just a few of the issues: healthcare, taxes, the budget. I also sit on the Intelligence Committee. My older child calls it the so-called Intelligence Committee. And I've really been the privacy hawk in the United States Senate, taken on big surveillance, because I think we can have our rights and our security. They're not mutually exclusive. That's my job on the Intelligence Committee.
Thank you. We'll resume the question, next two numbers, but before I do that, I do want to recognize somebody in the room who is one of our Washington County leaders as well. City Councilor, Hillsborough City Councilor Beach Pace in the back. Councilor Pace, I saw you flag down to the police earlier, so thank you so much. That really expedited the process to get public safety in the building, so thank you. Now, the next two numbers. Remember the last three digits. 099, first number, 099. There you go, thank you.
And when we're done with these two numbers, I believe Janelle Theobald is here, and she's going to talk to us about mental health. Janelle will have the next two questions. We'll go to you. Okay?
Perfect. Okay,
Thank you.
second number, 100. 100? Oh, there you go, sir. Okay, you go, sir. And then-
This gentleman this gentleman, and Janelle.
Thank you, Senator Wyden. We really appreciate you being here. I know you already mentioned Social Security, Medicare, drug relief, etc., and I think those are very important, and thank you for working on those. The big bill that was passed by Congress had to do with the infrastructure. I'd like to know what that's going to mean for the state of Oregon in terms of the help that we're going to get here or the work that's going to come this way. Thank you.
It's going to be a big shot in the arm for our roads and our bridges and our transportation systems. It also has, for example, something I've worked on for some time, power resiliency. You know, we have all these storms and lightning strikes and the like, and the power lines go out. The next round of power lines, folks, I want more of them built underground. And I think that will be sensible. Here's what I'm doing, and if the commissioner would like it, what I'm doing is putting on programs in various counties, just walking people through the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I think it's going to be a lifeline for Washington County because, as you all know, in Washington County, you have traffic jams everywhere. And we are going to need to make sure that to have big league quality of life, you can't have little league infrastructure. So we're going to be walking everybody through it. But I wanted to give you an example of how you can make investments in infrastructure like power resiliency and do it in a smart way, a cost-effective way, and get more of them underground. And I think the community will like that. Okay, gentleman here, and then Janelle. Yes, sir.
I'm Craig Abercrombie, a retired postmaster, Scappoose, and I'm a member of NARF. What I'm here about is a WPO, WEP offset Social Security, which since I retired, I'm a score dance scholar, so I've paid all my quarters into Social Security. We almost got it onto the floor of the House this year, all the subcommittee, we got all the enough support that it was going to, but it didn't make it. But I was told that you weren't real in favor of it because we have close to an 8% Social Security raise.
I'm sorry, you heard what?
I heard that at one of the meetings that you were not in favor of us to get that since we're having this mass 8% raise, cost of living for Social Security recipients. However, the way mine works,
Yeah, go ahead.
I only get $77 and I did not get an increase this year.
Yeah, I don't think fairness for government retirees like you and fairness for Social Security recipients who got the higher rate because of inflation are mutually exclusive. I think we need both, and I've been supportive of what you all are trying to do.
We're going to keep at it.
Good, I'm
and
supportive.
Thank you for your work.
I'm supportive,
Yeah.
but again, when you hear kind of how these issues evolve, and the commissioner has to deal with this as well, there are issues that sometimes are portrayed as kind of one simple solution or another. I think we need fairness for Social Security recipients, particularly as it relates to the COLA, because a lot of their expenses like food went through the roof and it was hard to afford it. So the COLA did go up, more than usual as a result of inflation. But I don't think that's something that makes it impossible to get a fair shake for government workers. And I'm interested in doing both. That's what I'm working on.
What's it going to take for us to get this through?
Well, I think almost all of the issues today are a question of recognizing that political change is best from the bottom up. It isn't very often trickled down. And so the fact that you're coming to this meeting and you got a big crowd of your friends and neighbors, many of whom probably didn't know about this before you heard it, you just heard one of your United States senators say he wants to help them. So I better follow up, huh? That's the way you get political change. You get it by doing exactly what you're doing today, my friend. Coming out, shaking up the system, making it more accountable. You asked a good question, a thoughtful question, and it's my job to get fairness as it relates to retirement, and that's for both people on Social Security and people who have government retirement. It's not one or the other.
Appreciate everything you did. I grew up in your congressional neighborhood. Yeah.
Good.
East Portland, yeah.
You mean Eastmoreland?
Yeah. Madison High School.
Great.
Yeah.
Glad you're here. All right, Janelle, tell everybody about the mental health issue. Janelle, among other students, has been doing a great job getting young people involved in mental health.
Hi, my name is Janelle Theobald. I am a sophomore at the International School of Beaverton, and I'm also the founder and chairwoman of Let's Peer Up, which is a nonprofit organization that advocates for community support for people with mental health challenges. I was born with several physical and mental disabilities, including autism and a language processing delay. And because of this, I struggled for many years. I was often bullied and ignored by my classmates, and I switched schools a lot. I had attended seven by the time I was in 5th grade. But I have come to realize that I'm actually one of the lucky ones because I was able to go to many different therapists and counselors who helped me. And I also attended a special summer camp called Camp Meadowood Springs. And because of all this help, now I'm getting better. But like I said, I'm one of the lucky ones because many people, they have the same struggles, but they are not able to get the help that they need, either because they can't afford it or because they don't know where to find it. So, according to data from the World Health Organization, 1/7 of everyone in the entire world struggles with their mental health. And according to data from the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the average delay between onset of mental illness symptoms and treatment is 11 years. That is a pretty long time to go without treatment. And while there has been more recognition in recent years that this is a major problem, there have been many people working to get more mental health providers into the field, but while this is important, this is only a small part of the problem, because really, if we just let things continue at their current pace, we will never have enough mental health providers. And that's why we need a more comprehensive solution. Last year, the U.S. Surgeon General called for some systems of community support, and I think that this is, we do need community support because otherwise, we need community support so that we can free up mental health providers to be able to help the people with the most serious cases. And I believe that mental health is one of Senator Wyden's priorities. So I was thinking, I've talked a bit about myself. Maybe he could tell us a bit about what he's been doing, because I know that he has also been doing a lot for mental health.
Bravo, Janelle. I can't hear you very well for Janelle. And let's recognize that Janelle's voice is something that addresses issues that are coming up in every single corner of Oregon. There is not a community in our state where we are not dealing with what she talked about. For example, she talked about how the Surgeon General found that from the time of symptoms to getting treatment goes more than a decade. Janelle is spot on, and I'll only add that in Lapine, in rural Oregon, a wonderful young man, and Janelle remembers his testimony, I'm sure, in front of the Senate. He said that at our school, when there are referrals made by teachers and others to specialists, more than 70% of the time, nobody follows up. So what Janelle is talking about is urgent business. And we are involved in a variety of aspects of responding. For example, in the gun safety legislation, where some people said, oh, the issue is about guns and the issue is about mental health. I and a group of other senators said there are issues on both sides of the issue. We do have to keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them, but we need to do the mental health work that Janelle is talking about. So we were able to secure more than $10 billion for help that would go directly to the schools, for instruction, for answering students' questions, for telemedicine, and that's because Janelle's generation and so many young people are so savvy about digital technologies. We thought that was important. There's money for prevention, and there's money for teachers and trained instructors in behavioral health. So I will just tell you, Janelle has just nailed this. And you probably saw our new governor said the top two issues that she had were mental health and housing. And some of that goes hand in hand, because you may know that I was able to get $1 billion for the Cahoots program, which, by the way, goes to the counties, which lets mental health folks and law enforcement people work together. So we could spend our whole afternoon really just following up on Janelle's points. But Janelle, once again, every time I hear you make a presentation, I know that Oregon walks out stronger and more determined to carry out your agenda. And I'll just tell you, from me to you, you keep pushing, I'll keep pushing, we'll work together. Big thanks, Janelle. All right, who's next?
Next two numbers. Janelle, thank you so much for sharing your story and your experience, all the educations. Next two numbers.
And I'm going to ask, everybody looks like their teeth are chattering. Did it go cold here in the last few minutes? Hey, Lisa and Hank and everybody, guys in the back, if you could figure out how it got cold in the last few minutes, that would be great, because I don't want all these good Washington County residents to walk out frozen. Okay.
Nice observation. Thank you. Okay, last three numbers again. First number, 103. 103. There you go in the back. Can you raise your hand one more time? There you go. And second number is 128. 128. Okay, I'll draw one more. I'll put it back, set it aside. Okay, switching numbers. Second number, 123.
I just got to mention.
There you go. Okay, we got our two numbers.
Good. I just got to mention what happened at the schools not too long ago. It was clear that some of the students were having their names called, and they all went shy, and so they didn't ask their question. And one of the students in the front said, "This dude is so serious. We better ask our question or he'll come to our house." And I'm not coming to anybody's house, but don't feel shy. We want to get your input, okay? Everybody's views are welcome.
Okay. First person and then second person right there. Okay.
Hi, I'm Jim Brinkman in Beaverton. A few months ago, we read in the Oregonian about the infrastructure bill that was going to provide for more solar and wind power. In that bill, it was mentioned that there was no funding for transmission lines. And it actually mentioned your name, saying you were aware of it and you would try to get something done for transmission lines. So is this a true statement, and will there something be done for transmission lines?
It's mostly accurate. Let me put it into context. For 25 years, until last summer, we had gridlock on climate change. 25 years. Some people wanted cap and trade. Some people wanted carbon taxes. Some people wanted regulations, states, counties, and all the rest. Complete stalemate. I was not the chairman of the finance committee then, but I was a junior member of the finance committee. And I said, wait a minute, it's right in front of us. The federal tax code is a mess. I'm gonna try and throw it in the garbage can. And if I do, it'll be part of what we need to do on climate. So, what we did is we took the 43 provisions on climate and we turned them into one for clean energy, one for clean transportation, one for energy efficiency. And we didn't get the whole tax code on energy in the garbage, but we got pretty darn close. And now we have a new system that I designed and I wrote, the biggest investment in fighting climate change, folks, in American history. All right? $280 billion in clean energy tax credits. And it's technology neutral, it's market oriented, and the more you reduce carbon emissions, the bigger your tax savings. I got 90% of what we needed to have for the future, and the 10% is the part you're talking about, sir, which is essentially transmission. And it's very important. We're going to come back at it, but make no mistake about it. This is the beginning of a revolution. This is the beginning of the United States playing catch-up ball with all kinds of other parts of the world, Europe and Asia and the like. And the transmission issue is controversial between different parts of the country. But I'm coming back and we're going to get it. And the amount of private investment, people are calling and saying, I'm reading in the Wall Street Journal about this firm, this state, that firm. They're all taking advantage of your law because they know they can reduce carbon emissions and be eligible for the tax savings. That was the dream. It's one of the most important things I've done in my time in public service. I think it's going to make a huge difference for you.
Hello, I'm Henry Kaiser from Beaverton, Portland. I have two one-pagers with your staff. One of them involves mental health.
I couldn't hear the last word.
One of them involves the mental health issue.
Yes.
And on that issue, I responded to your October request for suggestions on innovation in children's mental health. And when I did that, I introduced you to the Neurofeedback Advocacy Project, which was developed here in Oregon. And to further that effort, we hired two consultants. And they have brought this, I think, this project to your attention even further. Here in Oregon, where this project started, there's a curious situation where in Lane County and Clackamas County, the contractors to OHA are allowed to use psychotherapy billing codes for neurofeedback, whereas in Multnomah and Washington, they are not. And the Neurofeedback Advocacy Project data shows not only dramatic clinical improvements, but dramatic cost savings throughout the healthcare system where neurofeedback is added to the range of treatment traditional therapies. So my first question is, why is it possible that we can't have a consistent policy through the counties without having OHA suppress what is working.
You're being way too logical.
Yes, I know. I know.
Well, and first of all, I remember getting this information and being very interested in the field. When you're talking about the issues you've just described over the last 3-4 minutes, you're talking about issues that are within the province of the state, the Oregon Health Authority. I've been so interested, I've been wondering if we should be looking at this on the federal side.
Exactly. Yes.
As well. So let us continue our discussions, but I don't want to have anybody walk out of here and say, Ron told us he was in charge of OHA.
Understand.
We got a new governor, she's in charge of it, but let us continue this discussion.
Like to do it.
Mental health and behavioral health is really a challenge. And I'm really excited to see a lot of our leaders are centering and calling it a priority.
Commissioner, if I could have 30 seconds, so everybody knows, this is so important to Oregon, and it is so important to me as an Oregonian. My brother was schizophrenic. My dad actually wrote a book called Conquering Schizophrenia because he thought we were on our way to getting this issue under significant progress. And in the Wyden household, every single night, for years on end, my brother Jeff would be on the streets, and we would be worried he was going to hurt himself or somebody else. So Janelle is speaking for so many Oregonians. The gentleman who just talked about the promising kinds of ideas associated with scientific research is talking about it. Your great commissioner is talking about it, and your senator is talking about it. We're going to get on top of this. We are going to make, in this session of Congress, in the legislature, in the county commissions, we're going to make a difference, because this has got to be done to have the better Oregon we all care about.
Oh, thank you. So, okay, next two numbers. 107. Thank you. And then 098.
Great to see all these
there
young
you go.
people out, too.
Perfect. We have her too.
Hi, Senator Wyden. My name is Ashley. I'm an RN, and I really appreciate all the work you're doing around the access of healthcare and all the work you did with the prices, pharmaceutical drugs, that you really care about people having access to what's important and what's helping. So on those lines, I have a concern. My family and many of my community and many of the Portland community as a whole, we utilize homeopathic medicines as part of our healthcare strategy.
Yep.
And in December, early December, late November, the FDA finalized a new draft guidance on that puts this category of medicines that's been so well regulated since 1938 into a bit of a gray area. And so some of our accessibility as a country is already being limited because of this new guidance, and I'm concerned there could be more limitations to our access in the future.
Let me make sure I know what your focus is. You're talking about an FDA rule that would restrict homeopathic kind of opportunities?
Correct. So they have a guidance policy that's their enforcement policy around it, and it was a shift from, we had a beautiful guidance.
That's the part. Why was something changed? I've been very supportive, as you may know, of homeopathy, and in my bipartisan health reform bill, I said, look, people who have valid state licenses ought to be part of the delivery system, and we shouldn't have a turf protection racket where one group tries to keep another out. And so tell me what you believe is the reason someone would move to a more anti-homeopathy position, particularly in a government agency, when so many Americans are looking to that alternative.
No, that's a really good question, and I think we have asked the FDA. Like I volunteer with an organization that's full of consumers and people who use homeopathy across the U.S. We've been trying to have these conversations. We filed 2 citizens petitions to the FDA on this topic, but we've never really gotten a lot of clear answers. We've asked them, like, what are your concerns? What What's the data that's behind you shifting from what we had from 1988 to 2017? Why would you change that to something new that kind of puts it into this kind of unapproved new drug sort of a category? And we didn't get a lot of feedback. The data they did share with us didn't really help us to understand their level of concern, because this is the safest category of medicines that they regulate. You can't get any better than our safety record. So we're not sure.
Sounds to me like your United States Senator ought to ask some questions.
We would be very grateful, very grateful.
That's what I'm going to do.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for coming. You know, what's striking about that question, it's representative of a lot of, government. I'm not going to walk in here and say that for purposes of this morning, I knew everything about some new rule at the Food and Drug Administration, which, by the way, the question was about the beginning of the year. That's not under the authority of the Finance Committee. That's under the story of the Health Committee. But when you have an election certificate, you're supposed to hold government accountable. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to ask some questions. We're going to get back to her, and we're going to learn something. And that's what government and public service is supposed to be about. So you have questions, and you want them raised, and you follow up.
Next question, right here.
That's kind of... Hi, Senator Wyden. I'm Donna Clark. I'm a former director, public health director, and
you and I have been in a bunch of meetings over the years.
We have.
Donna, do you know anything about what that person is talking about?
No, I don't exactly.
All right.
That's sort of out of my league.
Great.
But I'm here to talk a little bit about, or ask you about elder care. You've been a terrific...
Healthcare.
Yeah, you've been a terrific champion of that, and the baby boomers have not aged out yet. And I think during COVID, we learned the problems that we had before in elder care got significantly worse. And so the question is, do you see any opportunities or progressive ideas that can work on some of the things like staffing shortages, staffing training, antiquated buildings, fundings that give incentives for good care? And I mean, we're going to still need care for 24-hour care for people. And I'm just wondering...
Let me give you an example of something that I've just seen in the last couple of days, and I'm going to push very hard. Senator Merkley and I were able to get $500,000 for Lane Community College to do simulated healthcare training, where in effect, they would have the mannequins, and sometimes one student would be in the bed and they would be working on the training. And I think dollar for dollar, these simulated health instruction programs that could be run by the community college would be hugely valuable. I think, tell you what one student said, and I'll never forget it. I was on my way out. She was fairly short, and she came up to me, and she looked at me like she was looking at a building. She was like just, looking straight up, and was very shy. And she said, the reason I like the simulated training program so much, Mr. Senator, as she looks up at the ceiling, she said, the reason I like it so much is it's a lot better if I make my mistakes in here rather than on real patients out there. Now, those are the kinds of approaches that I think dollar for dollar are going to make a lot of sense. And I walked out there and I said, I'm going to go full throttle on these kinds of ideas that allow us to make better use of resources. And by the way, it's a twofer. Not only do you allow for cost-effective training of that young woman, but when I was walking out, they said, for all practical purposes, we have been able to create in this simulated environment something that if we have a real emergency in this area, we can turn into what amounts to an emergency room just like this. So we're going to need some fresh thinking. I also will tell you, a big priority of mine is built around the legislation that I got passed with Orrin Hatch. Some of you may remember that name, great senator from Utah, very, very conservative, disagree with me on plenty of things. But before he retired, I was able to persuade him to say that there needs to be a very different area of emphasis in Medicare. and you and I may have talked about this. You know, Medicare, when it began, when I was director of the Gray Panthers, was mostly about acute care. You know, you broke your ankle, that was Part A of Medicare, folks. You went to the hospital, got it repaired, all the rest. That's still extraordinarily important. That is not the bulk of Medicare funding today. The bulk of Medicare funding today is about chronic care. Cancer, heart disease, strokes, diabetes, chronic care. And so we got legislation passed to put this new emphasis on updating the guarantee of Medicare into chronic care. And to give you an idea, the biggest part of our legislation involved telemedicine. And during the first couple of weeks of the pandemic, Donald Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services called me and said, Senator Wyden, would you mind if we used your telemedicine provisions as the starting point for how we're going to use telemedicine in the pandemic? And I said, ma'am, you're the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and you're asking me if you can use my bill? My position is I'll work with anybody who's going to help the American people, and that was the beginning of this new policy on telemedicine. So you kind of listen, try to shape policy, whether it's simulated training, whether it's chronic care, whether it's telemedicine. And I think, and I remember listening to you over the years on this, you may think you're retired. We're going to rope you into some stuff. Thank you. Great point.
This is a very proud Oregonian moment. Thank you for making Oregon be a model. Thank you, Senator. The next two numbers are 093, and then second number is 097. And I must say, I'm having a also proud Washington County moment because we came prepared with these tough questions that we're asking the senator, so thank you.
Hi, Senator. My name is Heather Davis. I'm a fifth generation Oregonian. I've been in the Air Force. I live in Washington County. Thank you for all you do. On the intelligence community, one of the things that I am really concerned about is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. How are we going to survive with the Republicans in the House?
Tell me your position on it. I know Oregonians have strong views. Are you supportive?
Oh, I'm very supportive of Ukraine and Zelensky.
Right.
I kind of think we ought to drop, McCarthy, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and all those insurrectionists over in Russia and let them stay and remind them they won't get to take their guns with them.
Yeah. I think it's too early to tell how the House is going to respond to Ukraine. I can tell you that I was sitting in the front when President Zelensky came, and you probably saw some of the speech and the like. It was one of the best speeches I've ever heard, and Republicans and Democrats alike were clapping until their hands were going to fall off. So my hope is that that will help to make the support more bipartisan. Here's the thing. I can't get into classified matters, I'm on the Intelligence Committee. But Putin is KGB.
Oh, I know.
KGB all the frigging way.
And a bad one had it.
And my own take, without getting into classified matters, is he still has this kind of vision for a broader kind of old Soviet Union, kind of Mother Russia and the like. And he didn't expect this. That's why we're seeing behavior. You know, he just named a new head general, I guess it was yesterday. Saw his picture in the paper. He thought that he was just going to waltz in to Ukraine and everybody would, be sitting there with Russian flags and waving at him and saying, "Thank you, Vladimir, come have an ice cream." And he didn't count on the fact that around the world, freedom is breaking out. And people are not just willing to accept an, autocrat pushing them around. And I think it is so important because if we don't deal with him here and now, make no mistake about it, we'll be dealing with him in a variety of other places.
Well, admittedly, it would have been nice had President Obama been a little bit more firm. I mean, yes, kicking him off the G8 and making it the G7 and putting some sanctions in, but not cranking down hard enough to tell Putin that was really a bad idea going into Crimea and his little green men.
Well, there are a lot of things from the past, and we all remember those presidential debates and all that. That's all been done. Now what we got to do is figure out how to protect strategic American interests. And I am not forgiven, by the way, military contractors have passed on a lot of these bloated, weapon systems, and I've been voting against them. But I think this is something that we need to stand strong on, and stand committed, and we've made it clear we're not going to introduce troops. We've also made it clear that we're going to be strongly behind this effort and working with the multinational coalition that exists.
Do the next two numbers, did we miss? Oh, there you go. One second. Thank you.
We're having quite a problem around here with the homeless and with thefts. My mail was taken out of my mailbox this weekend, my outgoing packages. We've got people broke into all the cars across the street from me. I'm a night owl, so I'm up all night. I went to bed at midnight one night and they got the whole street. I'm in Garden Home, so it's, that's a really quiet neighborhood. And I'm wondering why we no longer have any police drive-bys at night. I've called, and we've called on everything. They basically said, oh, well, report it. We'll go online, report it. We're interested in the statistics, but we can't do anything to help you. And we've got so many homeless out here, and the garbage and the filth and the rats. Can we do anything about at least putting out more dumpsters for them to put their garbage in? Police patrols to try to protect some of us. I mean, after COVID, I lost my company of 35 years, so I'm selling on eBay.
I'm sorry, after COVID?
With COVID, I lost my company of 35 years. And so I'm selling on eBay, and it's slow right now. As the economy, tanked or got into the position where everything was more money, people aren't spending money. And the last thing I can afford is to have scum, to put it nicely, stealing my packages out of my mail. And I've got neighbors that have had the porch pirate things grabbing their Amazon, packages coming in. And I'm just wondering, can't we get, like we used to have, drive-bys where the police are there at night and, before early morning, just occasionally to come by.
Let me see if I can kind of put this in terms that are, as you've said, so important for the community. Are you retired? Okay. So, okay, do you get Social Security or Medicare? To do it. Okay. So you're getting some help on Medicaid? Okay. More than anything, what you just heard is here's a person who is just asking for what we've always thought was just a lifeline in Oregon. A chance if you worked hard and played by the rules. I asked about retirement and like, and we'll follow this up. And it's getting harder and harder to, in effect, get by. So you said, selling on. Ma'am, I'm just having trouble hearing. Would you maybe pull your mask down?
I think that the main thing I'm asking is why have we got no controls over what's going on? We don't have police drive-bys. They aren't interested in the thefts. Yeah, the crime.
Good.
And the homeless camps and things we've got all over this entire area. I'm paying $4,700 in property taxes. A big chunk of it is for policing.
Right.
I don't see a police officer.
Yeah.
Unless it's something really critical.
Yeah, and the point is these wonderful fellas are really stretched. Let's give them a round of applause too for all that they do for us. And I'm going to kind of walk you through a little bit of the law enforcement picture, because this is not all local or state or federal. On the federal side, now we had a vote, for example, on defunding the police. And I think your concerns are really important, and I voted against that. So there's like a real vote, and you can see, where senators stand. I think on the federal side, there are two areas where the federal government is going to have to do more. One of them is gangs, because a lot of the problem is associated with gangs, and a lot of it is with guns. Now, when you talk about the homeless, I've been able to get additional federal funds for the various counties and localities. So that helps, but it's nowhere near all that needs to be done. So we're trying, for example, to use housing vouchers that would make it more likely that people would not be homeless next to your house, but would have, a place, particularly during a cold winter. But
programs to put those people to work. I don't want to keep paying property taxes for people that have no interest in doing anything but having their hands out. And like I said, my main question is, why don't we have at least some drive-bys in the community in the dark at night and very early in the morning to try to stop the thefts that are going on? Why are we paying property taxes for the police and for that kind of security when we never see them? We need that help. We need, my neighbors and I need to not have to be afraid. I can't now, now I'm having to drive to the post office to drop off a package or stand outside waiting for the mailman hoping we have our regular guy. This is not how we should be living. We're paying to be here. We're paying for these resources. We're paying for garbage service. Put some dumpsters out to prevent the rats while the people with the garbage get cops to drive by.
What I'm going to do is find out what neighborhood you're in, and I'm going to get on the phone just the way I do, because those are local measures. The United States Senate is not in charge of it, but because you are absolutely right, I say, fine, it's a local thing. We will call for you. We will ask, why aren't they having drive-bys, and why haven't homeless people had housing vouchers and the like? I get it. I just don't want to mislead you and say that the federal government is in charge of these kinds of things. Well,
I knew that it wasn't. I just thought that it was a place
absolutely
to maybe bring up a subject and ask for some help.
Not only is it the place, you have spoken eloquently and for a lot of people. And so if you'll just give me something to follow up on when you've got one of these situations where it's just out of hand in your neighborhood, we will follow it up, okay? We will be on the phone. You got all these witnesses. We will be on the phone, the local people and the local agencies and people who are supposed to pick up the trash and people in charge of the police. We'll do everything we can to help. I just don't want to mislead you and say that your United States Senator can fix it all.
I do that.
Okay.
I'm aware of that. I just, like I said, I thought that this was at least Washington County, and there would be Washington County.
This was exactly the place to bring it up. Thank you for speaking for so many people. We'll follow up what you have brought us.
If I may add, for Washington County, next Tuesday, we're having conversation as your Board of Commissioners to talk about that very reason. So tune into the Board of Washington County Commissioners too, because we have a lot of unhoused people, and then we have a lot of housed people. There's an impact. So we're having a conversation about what we can do around time, place, and manner, how do we manage the captains. So we'll follow up.
The other point, ma'am, before we wrap up, is that, are you there, ma'am? Is a lot of these criminals are doing things where, for example, these catalytic converters, they're stealing them. It's in interstate commerce. And so I've introduced a bill to crack down on that, because that is also responsible for a lot of the crime that you see in Portland neighborhoods. These criminals are coming in and stealing the catalytic converters. So we're going to follow up, and there is certainly more that the federal government can do to better protect your neighborhood, and we can also deal with the local agencies, and the commissioner just made.
What they're finding right now is they get somebody robbed the mail, because this was really weird. So they steal your mail, they open it up, and they drop the garbage at the next house that they robbed. The mail that I received was from West Lynn. I live in Garden Home. They had opened up a package that somebody from Etsy in London had sent, and I received this. And one of the neighbors said they've seen now, and I don't know why the hell they didn't do something about it, bunches of mail in ditches someplace. So this is also federal, where the post office, something. And people said, well, get a locked mailbox. Well, that isn't going to do any good. That's fine for your incoming crap that they're welcome to. It's not okay for the things we're sending out. It's not okay for the packages. Everybody's living on Amazon and eBay and ordering everything offline. And, you know, the neighbor said, oh, well, Amazon replaced it. Well, Amazon didn't replace it. That seller who paid for it replaced it. And so you're putting small businesses that have, you know, developed because of what's going on in COVID, you're putting us into a position where we can't exist because the mail is being stolen. So that is federal.
It is, and I will be on the phone immediately to the Postal Service, and we're going to use, you know, your example. That's why I mentioned this question of gangs and sophisticated criminals. I'd be willing to bet that a fair amount of the activity that's going on in your neighborhood is not just a one-off where an isolated fellow just goes through there. These are sophisticated criminals, and we're going to look at how the machinery of federal law enforcement can make a difference in your neighborhood. Okay? You give us the phone number so we can be in touch, and the email, and then we'll follow up and stay with it, because you're not. You said this was the place to bring it up. You bet it is. You know, when people have problems, particularly problems that cross federal, state, and local lines, it's my job to follow up, and that's what I'm going to do. Thank you for bringing it up.
Okay. Next two numbers. First number, 108. Second number, 092.
Greetings, Senator. My name is Bruce Bartlett from Cedar Mill, and I stand in solidarity with everything that you've said so far. Thank you so much.
Then you're ahead of my wife. She would probably disagree with several things I would.
I could speak to any of those issues passionately, but the thing I want to mention is that the zip code 97229, which starts in northwest Portland and moves into Washington County, encompassing 100,000 people in the unincorporated urban area, has no post office. The 97229 post office is a large facility that's a mail processing facility, but I was in the office where you go to pick up a package behind a single closed door, and a woman went in to buy a stamp, and she could not buy a stamp at the 97229 post office. The one post office we had in northwest Portland on 24th was closed recently, leaving the Hillsborough or the Beaverton post offices or the Garden Home post office as the only post offices we have. So
I think the point the gentleman is making sort of highlights, and I know we're probably getting fairly close, a big part of the discussion about the role of government. You can discuss various aspects of services, but we made the judgment years ago that the post office would be something run by the federal government, and it would be there for everybody. That meant the little, community up at the end of our road in Eastern Oregon and Washington County. It meant everybody, in between. The fact is, folks, people who are well-to-do are always going to have postal service. I went to school on a basketball scholarship. Love watching LeBron James. LeBron James is going to be able to have postal service whether the government runs it or private companies do it. But for folks like the person who's getting, ripped off by, thieves and the like, and you're talking about how far away it is, this is something that the federal government, based on the decision we made a long time ago, ought to have a role ensuring that you get basic service. I'll follow this up right away, and we're going to work on this until you do.
97229.
All right, everybody hear that? 97229 is in the House, and they deserve postal service.
Okay, second question, and then we have 2 more questions. We're coming to an end of our program.
Okay, Mr. Wyden, we've been talking about mental health here, and one of the things I'm concerned with is social, I'm talking about, and oh, for crying out loud, I can't say it right.
Doing great.
Social media and like Twitter and that kind of stuff, and how it's just become a cesspool of lies and hate. And I'd just like your opinion on any regulation, or what are we going to do about this?
We're going to have a big debate on this, and it's a really important question for us to bring up. I showed up in the Senate when only one person knew how to use a computer, and I got a chance to write some of the ground rules for social media, and one of them is something called Section 230 that is fairly well known. And what we established then is the person who posts the content needs to be the one who's held individually responsible. Because if we're going to figure this out, looking down the road, the principle of individual responsibility and the person who has enough information about it is the person who wrote it and posted it has got to be held individually responsible. Now, we're having a lot of discussions about whether that ought to change, and it should be the platform, like Twitter or Facebook or something like that. I think it is undoable just from the standpoint of there's no way they can be on top of all of those posts. But I also think that the proposition that we decided on not long after I came to the Senate of individual responsibility is still the best way to go. And the other reason is the big guys are always going to have enough money to buy their way out of the system. But the people who need a voice are the marginalized communities and the people who don't have money and power. And we talked to, for example, the Me Too movement, and they say we never would have gotten those stories out. Some of those folks have said, on all those powerful people, if we didn't have the principle of individual responsibility, because the big guys would have been protected. So there are a lot of reforms we need to do, and I'll mention one that I'm working on now, and that is these algorithms. You all heard about the algorithms? These are supposed to be these computer formulas, and people say they're neutral. Not on your life. And I've introduced something called the Algorithm Accountability Act. And to give you an idea, when I introduced it, the Football Players Association was in the middle of the concussion settlement talks with the owners. And the football players got in touch with us. And they said, see what you're trying to do on these algorithms. Would you take a look at what these algorithms that they're using to give us very modest concussion settlements? And they asked me, and I looked at it, and I said, let me ask my staff, but I'm going to look at it myself. And when I looked at it, I said, this is race norming. This is saying that the black athlete has less cognitive ability than the white athlete. And I brought it to the staff, and they said the same thing. And the players brought it up with the association, and they are winning at every level of the proceeding. They are winning better and fairer settlements because we fought for algorithm accountability. So there's a lot to do here, and we'll Be glad to stay in touch, and thank you for bringing it up. It's very important.
And we're coming close to the end, so we only actually have one question time. So I picked a lucky number, so you get to wrap up with your question. And that number is 094. 094. Oh, Ronnie. Mr. Ronnie Wyden.
Senator, thank you for being here. I know that you're in the Senate and this is a House of Representatives question, but a lot of us have been covering the story of George Santos, who lied his way into Congress. And I know there are a lot of people down on their knees begging him to resign, and he's being very defiant about it. Is there anything the federal government can do to get this lying person out of Congress?
Well, he's going to have tremendous difficulty doing his job. For example, I saw on TV last night a House member, I don't know whether they were a Democrat or Republican, because he's getting Republican opponents as well, saying, why should this person get a classified briefing? You know, a classified briefing is for people that you can trust with America's secrets. I think he's going to have a very difficult, job carrying out anything resembling the duties of a member of Congress. And look, first of all, let's give the commissioner a big round of applause. She handled masterfully the typical, quiet, low-key, subdued town hall meeting. And, the kidding aside, I want to thank everybody for a very civil conversation, other than the one instance. And the reason that we've been able to have civil conversation is that everybody else in this room respected each other. And we were very lucky to have our first responders helping us as well. Let's give them a round of applause. Give them a round of applause for handling this in a very thoughtful way. So you walk out of here and you might disagree with me on one subject or two subjects, or maybe you say, Ron doesn't know much about anything. And that's tough luck for us. What I will tell you is I don't have all the answers. And on a lot of these issues, it involves the federal government, the state government, the local governments, why we're so lucky to have our county commissioner here. I particularly appreciate our friend there in the third row bringing up this question of law enforcement and public safety and postal services and the homeless and the like, because that's part of my job. I'm the state's senior senator. It's a tremendous honor. And some of what we're talking about is local, some of it's state, and some of it's federal. It's my job to figure out how to get into the nuts and bolts of it and try to help. And I just want to thank all of you for your patience, for your willingness to come out on a cold afternoon to educate me. Coming up, I never thought I would have these kinds of opportunities for public service. A Jewish kid, a first-generation Jewish kid who wanted to play in the NBA, ridiculous idea. I got a college scholarship, but there's one remnant of my career, and that is on my wall. We posted the scholarship offer that I got from Gonzaga, which is kind of a basketball power. And the reason I put it up on the wall is I just wanted history to show that a Jewish kid could play with the Jesuits. And the point really is, Oregon is at its best when we work together. And I don't have all the answers, but we've got the county commissioner here. We've got lots of people who've asked thoughtful, important questions, a lot of follow-up work to do. Washington County, thanks for coming through again. To be continued.